So, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our very first 2025-2026 departmental lectures. Let me first thank the school and the department for supporting these events. And let me point out Benai, with whom we oversee the lectures and exhibitions. And we are super excited about our line of lectures for you in this semester. But we are most excited about our guests today, Paradigma Ariadné. They are a young but already well-established office from Hungary. And I'm happy to report that they are fresh from the Chicago Biennale. So they just drove from there. It's a good luck for us to have them here. And it's also super nice to have the whole office here. David will present, but you will also see, I see some of them, yes, Lila, Szabolcs, and Attila in the audience. So please seek them out and spur some discussion. I'm trying to do the magic here because the food hasn't arrived yet, which I'm sure that you all noticed. It will be here in a couple of minutes. And if you want, you can boycott Wegmans from now on, just to ruining the event for us. So back to Paradigma Ariadné. They founded their office in 2016, and that's weird because it's exactly the time since I know them, which is not important. The important part is how I know them, because that will tell you a lot about how they approach architecture. So in addition to designing buildings like normal architects do, they also get involved in progressing the knowledge about architecture like every architecture should do. And they were organizing a symposium in Berlin at the time. And when you are a super young office in Hungary, you have to be very resourceful. And they are, I'm happy to report, very resourceful. So they gathered us together, put us in a van, and actually drove us to Berlin to make the symposium happen. The message here is that they really go the extra mile for architecture in everything that they do. And that in itself is something I think you will also see in their slides, but you should bring with you home in a way. All right. I really cannot push it until the pizza arrives. So instead of doing that, instead of doing that, let me put info about them out there. They have been exhibited all over the world, including, and let me check the notes, Paris, London, Venice, and Vienna, in addition to Chicago. And they have been also published in the Architecture Review, in Domus, and others. And they have been, in 2024, named as a nominee for the AR Emerging Architecture Award. Yes. So without further ado, please welcome Paradigma Ariadné and David.
So food is not here. We are, so that's what you have to have right now. Thank you very much for having us. It's a great pleasure to be here, really. Whole United States trip that we are having now is really a good experience for us. This is our first time in the United States, so that's why it's also full of excitement on our side. Thank you very much for Austria for inviting us, and for all the others who made it possible that present our works here and introduce a little bit of our approach that we have in Paradigma Ariadné and how we design and how we did it since 10 years when we established the studio, which means that we are not that young as we were that time when we first in Berlin. But it also has some consequences, but we are happy to answer any questions after our works about this even. Awareness of the drawn nature of architecture in the works of Paradigma Ariadné, slightly over-intellectualized title. It is also true for us a little bit, but we always seek for possibilities to over-intellectualize impact in architectural design, but also try to translate it for everyone, to make it not make it something that is divert them from architecture, but bring them closer and help them to understand more precisely. This is also true for our name, Paradigma Ariadné, which I'm not going to introduce for you in this presentation because we don't have time for that. But after the lecture, we are happy to introduce this name, why we choose this, and how it's a theoretical resource on one hand and a business tool actually on other hand, because it's always starts a discussion. What the heck Paradigma Ariadné means? Everyone asks this, and it's a really well-designed name in this way. Also, it's important to tell that I cannot stop the. Sorry. Yeah. It's also important to highlight that I'm not alone for Paradigma Ariadné. We. Actually, by now, we are 4 of us who is here, and this is how we operate the studio together. Attila, Lilla, me, and Szabos on the right of this image that you can see. They are also here, and they are also open to answer any of your questions if you have afterwards. We know that now this semester of you is about drawing or printing, mostly about printing, but obviously printing in architecture and drawing in architecture are slightly connected. And first of all, I think it's important to tell you that we're not fanatics about drawing, which doesn't mean that it's not important for us, but whenever we start a design process and there's a client outside who reach us and put the stakes on the table, what he wants or what they want. After that, we always sit down first, 4 of us in the table, and start to discuss about the project, what possibilities we have in that project, what we could reach for, and what kind of representation we can use during the design process, and what kind of representation we could have when we finish with the project. So we really put serious effort to find the right representation in terms of each project, because they are also in a really wide range, because we have design projects on one hand, but we have editorial projects and curatorial projects and so many different kinds of projects which is related to architecture. But the question is always there, that why architects are so eager to find the right representational format for the design that they do, because you will be able only draw technical drawings or introduce technical drawings about an architecture, about your architecture. Why is it important to apply different kind of drawing techniques or different kind of presentational format in architecture? And that's the question. Yeah, this is what I asked. And as we read it, that this is because that's the only part where you are in charge as an architect alone in the design process, which is really important. If we approach architecture from an artistic point of view, probably you will experience, or you already experienced, that the only thing that you deal with alone, or maybe within a group of architects, is that the drawing itself, what you can do about the design that you do, and there is no any power dynamics around the drawing that you are creating. And it's also important because it's a commonplace, but we are not building, right? So there is no bricks on the table while you are working, but screens or papers, as it was in the past time. And this means that there is a harsh border in between the realization of architecture and the design process of architecture. It's always a translation. If you are lucky, you are there in the translation of process. If you are lucky, the constructor understands the drawing. If you are not lucky, the constructor do not understand the drawing, and you are not even there, and something will be realized, which has slight similarities of what you wanted to do as an architect, but it's not always true for that. This is what I think we can accept. And this is also implies some sort of politics. The client, the constructor, the architect should always negotiate on the project, because the budget goes so high, so you have to cut somehow, and you have to change, and a lot of things happens after the drawing. But in the drawing, you are alone and you control that. And for us, it's also important to say that drawing is not always, it's always search for its place during the design process. Sometimes it's a beginning, sometimes it's a sketch, just an idea that we just came out of us and we turn into space or some sort of concept. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes only our discussion is the base of our design process. And during the design process, there's a part when we feel that, okay, now we have to turn back to some sort of sketches and solve a problem that we cannot solve simply discussing and so on. And it also happens that sometimes a nice drawing, wonderful printing, it's only concluding the end. Not because you wanted to fake some sort of process, but also because during the design process, for instance, you have no time to represent an idea, which was always in your head during the design process. But when everything is finished, you just sit down and do a nice drawing or nice representation of the architecture that you figured out. Or maybe you just want to give a present to the client who was satisfied with the project. And it's also could work as an artwork that with the client could be happy. So in this project that we're going to introduce, you're going to see hand drawings, collages, commercial renders, and printings. And I would like to highlight that you're also going to see commercial renders. We are those architects, I think, who always search for, as I told you, a different kind of representation, and commercial renders are part of it. Not simply because this is the most common visual language today that the client understands, and that because simply that is the available one, but because sometimes you would like to represent an idea that could fit to commercial renders, for instance, and not simply collage in the nice artistic drawings. So first, let's get into this project. This is a competition that we did to renovate the Warszawianka Sport Complex. The Warszawianka Sport Complex is in Poland. It's close to Hungary, a European country. And in Warsaw, there is this sport complex that was realized in the 1960s, when there was state communism in Poland. And the state communism meant that the land was owned by the state, and also there were no private property, which means there were no private companies, and there were no private architecture studios at all. There were architecture offices who control the architecture. Architects was able to join these kind of offices and practice architecture within offices only. And Warszawianka Sport Complex is special because it was not simply, on one hand, it was I have to admit Felicia first, I guess, to be in, and then I can continue my presentation. Yes? So on one hand, it's a sport complex full of sport facilities for the people of Poland, socialist people of Poland. And at that time, it's full of nice details, as the Polish colleagues called ineffable space. So it was kind of related to the Corbusian modernist architecture that time. But it was also important that this piece of landscapes and buildings together were designed by a very special architecture office, state-run office, called Art and Research Unit, which was an experiment in Poland that not simply set up an architecture office, state-run office, where architects sit together, but also artists involved in the design process. This is most of the drawing that was created by artists at that time, and most of the concept was also developed together with artists and architects. By artists, I mean painters and sculptors, and these sculptors, and these kind of representatives of art world. And the competition aimed to renovate this area, because after the change of the regime, many things happened. For instance, it was not owned by the state alone, but different kind of owners appeared on the land, different kind of renters appeared on the land, and this shattered the landscape itself and the sport facility, the architecture of the sport facility. And but there was a competition in 2017, I guess, as I remember, to renovate it into a very nice way. And we applied to this competition. So it really got our mind that this piece was designed with artists and architects together. So we invited our friends, these artists guys, who basically work with a medium which is a printed magazine called Technologie in das Unheimliche, a German terminology, technology and homeness, as we can translate it. And we invite them to join the design process, figure out something together. And this is the plot today, as you can see it. So it's full of barriers and fences. It's totally shattered. That the ineffable architecture that was originally there is not really understandable. But on the other hand, for us, it meant that there were, after the change of the regime, I don't know how many do you know about Eastern Europe in this term, but after the change of the regime, private property and private business possibilities appeared, and this introduced some sort of enthusiastic business approaches, and many people started to deal with these kind of possibilities to set up a sport facility within a bigger sport facility, but that, you know, they use a kind of architecture that is for everyday usage and so on and so on, and we said that it's really important that this is also part of our history. So why the competition aimed to get rid of these elements, basically, because they said that it's not fits to the original, wonderful, ineffable idea of Warsavianka sport complex. But we said, on the other hand, that this is also part of our history, that at one time in the Eastern European region, we returned to capitalism and we returned to democracy. And that implied some sort of aesthetic that we should accept, that this is how it goes. And we started to work with these elements and started to build up collages out of it. I mean, architectural collages in terms of putting these elements next to each other and fulfill the criteria of the competition, which was basically that you set up a coffee shop, you set up buildings to change clothes for sport activities and so on and so on. So not big deals, but little elements that could help the people to have sport there. And out of these elements, really as a collage-like composition, we started to build up this kind of structure. This is a stage from people can watch sport if they want to. This is a place where people can change clothes. And this is a coffee shop. And this is how the competition, according to our conceptual idea, what we submitted to the competition. And this is why we used, or we felt that collages are, or kind of collages is fit to the representation, and this is how finally we represented the project for the jury. Obviously, it was, on one hand, it was rejected. It's pretty usual in our case that we are always rejected. But on the other hand, there was an exhibition about the other proposals as well at the end of the competition, and this was also exhibited. So we were pretty happy that somehow they get that we wanted to bring something Eastern European, after change of the regime, Eastern European quality into this part of the city. And with our artist friends, we also turned this into a magazine or a booklet or a fanzine kind of publication that you can see on these images, which introduced all the idea that we have during this kind of process that we have together as a design process. Another project of us from the early years of us is the pavilion that we designed for the Frankfurter book fair. In Frankfurt, every year there is a huge fair where all the Europeans, publishers, and people who related book publishing get together. And there always the nations also represented, European nations. And every year Hungary also represented there. And in 2017, when it's happened, we were invited to be there. And that was the year when Lajos Kassák, a famous abstract or avant-garde painter, the birth of his 115th birth of his anniversary of his birth of 115 happened. So okay, you understand probably what I wanted to say. So we have to commemorate to Lajos Kassák. That was the aim. So not simply just design a pavilion for the country to represent Hungary in this book fair, but also somehow try to design some sort of memorial installation for Lajos Kassák and his birth. And Lajos Kassák was a painter who called his paintings image architecture, if we translate it from Hungary directly. This is Képarchitektúra, as he called it, which means that he used different kinds of shapes and forms and built up the image out of these elements as he imagined how architecture is work structurally. So if you build up something, it has to balance and should work not simply just as a graphic logic, but also some sort of architecture logic. And this really got our mind during the design process, and we were thinking how we can solve this design task. And first of all, we think that, okay, let's separate these elements that was once painted by Lajos Kassák. Let's start to observe it. If it's called image architecture, then probably it could be used for architecture in the reality as well. And after this, the separation, we also observed that what if we turn these kind of shapes into three-dimensional objects, or three-dimensional barriers, which one can work as a space for negotiation, for small kind of activities that is involved in such a pavilion when there is a book fair there. And after that, the design process started as a collage of elements to find the right ratio and pieces which we can put together and could create the final layout of the pavilion, as you can see it here. And this is now, it's also, you can see the chairs and tables, so how it worked. So there were three separated spaces for negotiation and make deals about book production, a little stage for invite writers there who can present their ideas and they can have roundtable discussion, and a little info point where people can get information about Hungarian book selling and Hungarian book production itself. And all of these elements made out of the patterns that we stole basically from Lajos Kassák. But we really enjoyed the question that who the hell designed this pavilion? It was us or Lajos Kassák was who did it that time, and we just let ourselves to float in this very interesting question that who finally is the designer of the layout. And also we wanted to represent this kind of abstract or avant-garde painting within the boundaries of the pavilion. So here you can see all these look-throughs. It was designed in a way to represent some sort of image compositions that Lajos Kassák also had that time, and obviously it was all introduced in the pavilion, and this is how the final work looked like, and how terribly young architects, not as young as we are today, but way more younger, try to look cool on these images as well. And as I told you at the beginning, so there is always final tasks in design process. For instance, here what we did is that we took this image and we turned into a fake Lajos Kassák painting, but on purpose. During the research that we did about Lajos Kassák's work, it turned out that there are a lot of fake Lajos Kassák painting on the market. What else? There are many Lajos Kassák, fake Lajos Kassák paintings, which was produced by Lajos Kassák himself, because when he got older, he realized that his paintings that what he did younger age are terribly expensive on the Western market. So he decided to replicate these kind of paintings and sell it again. And in this context, we felt as a respect, it's okay to do a fake Lajos Kassák painting that is based on pavilion design, and also here's the sign of Lajos Kassák there. Another exhibition which we designed. On this image, you can see a plan for Budapest, which was not realized. The Technical and Transportation Museum Budapest decided to create an exhibition about unrealized design, unrealized plans for Budapest, the city where we are from. And they invited us to design installations to this exhibition, because at that time they felt that okay, we would be the right architects who could deal with this task. And these are original plans of Budapest from the early ages of the 20th century. How it could, different kind of subway line could be realized, or avenues could be realized, but none of them are happened in the shape as it is represented on these images. First of all, obviously, the client says, okay, guys, let's do renderings that shows how it would look like in reality. And for that, we said that maybe it's not a good idea to do that, because as I told you before, as we understand it, the commercial render or this rendering that looks really realistic could create, this is the most common vision. So people would be maybe confused whether is that realized or not. They could see a kind of reality of that project which never happened, and it could lead them to a way which But we introduced to the client one kind of solution that finally they were happy with, and that is the collage, which you all know properly, the architecture collage, but not in simply a plain form, but kind of three-dimensional form. This is works of András Szalai, an avant-garde Hungarian architect from the 80s, who sadly died in a very young age and was not able to fulfill his architecture career. But on the other hand, in his young age, he did a lot of wonderful installations that was architecture installations and models on one hand, but evolved into some sort of structure that occupied the full room where it was started to build. Probably this is how your place in this university will look like at the end of the semester. So it's it's a little bit a mess of models. And this, together with the idea of collages, which do not create the 100% feeling that it's reality, always implies some sort of artistic quality. And together with this idea of András Szalai also had that time how we can combine these things. And the final idea was that let's simply just cut this already existing drawings of an unrealized Budapest and shatter them into a very artistic composition that evokes the feeling that it is something what was an idea to be realized in Budapest, but on the other hand, if you go around, it turns into a simple installation of nice shapes and do not evoke the feeling that this is some sort of real, because it never happened and not going to happen in the future at all. Another strictly printing connected design we did. At the beginning of our studio, and you probably will experience it as well when you go out to the market and start to work together with clients, you're going to experience that obviously, and it's not a problem, but clients always have wishes what kind of architecture they would like to have and would like to see. And they use massive amount of tools to do that, to express what they want. At that time, when we established the studio, Pinterest was really the place through which they try to communicate what kind of feelings they would like to have. Obviously, they connect a bunch of images that would, on which we, if it would be reality, they could spend a whole fortune. But on the other hand, these images always represented what they want, but mostly feelings as we translated that time. Now, AI occupy this also. Terrible things reach us from clients. But on the other hand, in this stage, we said that, okay, let's accept it. We also use Pinterest. So I don't want to lie to you. Pinterest is really useful sometimes to search for inspiration, or rather check is that your idea already exists, which is a terrible feeling always, that you figure out something and it just hits you in the Pinterest. But on the other hand, there was this idea which we submitted to the design week to Budapest, that, okay, if the clients always show us Pinterest boards, what they want, then let's turn this Pinterest board into some sort of reality, which inspired from Pinterest, but also could be part of the of an interior. And that's how tapestry came to in our mind, that what if we just print a long sheet of Pinterest board, which we curated properly. So this is a plant-based tapestry that is part of the tapestry culture as well. And we put it on walls, and we said, okay, the client. So this is how we related to the idea that client sends us Pinterest board. Let's print the Pinterest board itself, because social media also applies aesthetically. And the aesthetic of these kind of the social media platforms occupy our visions much more than the built environment these days. So we're looking at screens, obviously, all day. And that's how this idea came into reality in this design product, actually, which is a Pinterest-themed tapestry. Another project, which is also related to printing in a strange way. This is the main square of the city of Sándorfalva, which is in Hungary. It's a small town, way smaller, I think, than State College here. And according to the urban tissue, it's more like a village. So it has the image of a village. But on the other hand, according to the number of population, legally they are a town. And they're also aware of this, really aware of this. So anytime during our consultation, when they become clients of us, and by mistake we said, okay, this is this for your village, we imagine this or that, they really politely, they always said that we are not a village anymore. We have an amount of people that we are a town now. And this kind of conversation and this kind of, you know, feeling that the representatives of the city has, or city representatives of the city have, started to made our ideas about what we designed for them, because they asked us to redesign this whole area, not from scratch because they don't have that much money, but they really wanted to update the main square of them. Here you can see the church, as it is always in the downtown. Here you can see the residence of the baron who established the city. The count to establish the city, but now it's obviously a cultural center. These are random blocks of housing, and this is a pump station, which somehow was a good idea to put a pump station in the middle of the city 30 years ago or more. And this conversion between town and urbanized character and the village character, we started to think about, okay, how to deal with this kind of identity. What would it come out of this feeling that the representatives and most of the inhabitants of Sándorfalva have? And our idea was that, okay, let's turn, so if they would like to be urbanized, and if they would like to be really a town or a city, then let's go for the ultimate representation of a city. And that is the map of Giambattista Nolli of Rome from a pre-Baroque age of Rome, which probably you learn or will learn because it's a really important reference of Rome, not simply reference for Rome from an age of a pre-Baroque age, which is the golden age of Rome, let's say, but on the other hand, also very important reference for public spaces, because Nolli's map introducing the public space in its reality, because the church, the inside of a church is also marked as a public space, and courtyards also marked as a public space. So it's introducing the urban tissue and the tissue of public spaces in its reality. And here the design task started that we took the ratio of this plot of which we have to redesign and placed on 1-to-1 scale, or full scale. Sorry, because I learned that this is how you say it here. So full scale, put on the Nolli map, and started to search for the right pattern that we can use for Sándorfalva to redesign their public square. Because it was important that there were some functional tasks. Here is the school that they have. So from the school, it was important to have a path to a church. Here is the municipality building is. So there also a path it was needed. Here is the bus station. So it was clear that some sort of diagonal is necessary, which also leads to the cultural center and so on and so on. And, you know, the design task was here to find the right spot in full scale in the Nolli map, which is representing Rome, to place it here in Sándorfalva, which is a small town far away from Rome in Hungary. And finally, that blue mark tells which was the pattern that we used here. And this is what we turned directly into the square as it is today. So on the square, you can see the imprint made out of pavestone, the column of Trajan. Santissimo Nome di Maria also represented here in Sándorfalva, and the random Roman block also is there, but they are functional public space, obviously, and this is how it looks like in terms of Nolli's map, and this is an aerial view that you can see from above. No Place House series. This was a scholarship that we won. The Hungarian Academy of Arts started a scholarship for artists and architects as well for 3 years that they can won, and we also won that that time to realize some sort of artistic work during the 3 years and free the architects of doing only commercial work day by day and have some sort of activity through which they can only represent the ideas about architecture. And this and before we applied for this scholarship, you know, a young architecture studio Sage at that time in Weaver, and this is a stage where you have so much ideas. You're just out of the university. You would like to design the whole world, really, and you have ideas for that from nowhere. Somehow it just hits your mind that I would like to design a kind of building which look like this. And many times these kind of ideas sound stupid, but you put it away to try to remember it for the future because maybe you can use that idea somehow. And this is we started to together collectively, that we had a box on our table, and sometimes we have a simple idea that I would like to design a building that looks like, I don't know, a pattern from a grandma's curtain. I will show you, and we just write it on a small piece of paper and put it in the box. And after that, we applied for the scholarship that, okay, we would like to realize these kind of ideas. And it's really important that even a stupid idea, so we don't believe that there is an idea which is not possible to be realized into a kind of building if you go through it. The only task is that you have to find the right way. How is that possible? And how is that possible to make it architecture which makes sense and not just stay as it is, which as a sound audio, which sounds first. For instance, house from grandma's curtain. This is what you can see here, a simply childish, also childish, a representation of a building. And we said that we would like to design something like this, especially Attila was the one who felt that urge that I would like to see something similar to this. And it's really important that we are like this, that if someone said that he would like to see something like this, we said, but exactly like this. Not a building that from one angle could be that, but make it some sort of a flat feeling. Also try to include that kind of flatness and that kind of little details that these kind of curtains could evoke into the design, the final design layout. And this is how the image of this is how this building, as a design or as an artistic representation, came to life. This is the house of grandma's curtain, and the trick with it is that it's a triangular shaped building, which you can look from each side, from all the 3 sides, and from all the 3 sides, you're going to see an image which refers to this very childish representation of architecture. And why we choose triangle shape, what you can see here from above, is that because if you stand in front of a building and if it has a triangular shape and you start to go on one side, the triangle shape helps you to keep its flatness, to keep feeling of flatness, keep it as long as it is possible, because if it would be a square shape, the trick would reveal very soon, but with a triangular shape, it could last longer. And that's how this project came to life. And we decided that in the scholarship, we have to design layouts that works, which are conservative layouts. Could work for 2 adults and for 2 children properly, not like a crazy thing. We're not challenging the living inside of this kind of housing, but should work as a proper building. And this is how we designed through 12 buildings during this in these processes. And also here you can see this is a simple renders, because we felt that the idea is so hard to digest for clients, for instance, who probably see this project, that we wanted to apply the most common visual language that they probably see in other projects before. So they're not going to ask that, Jesus Christ, what the heck I see, because somehow this evokes a familiar feeling to them that, okay, this is kind of the render this is as it is today. This is how a render look like today. And the interior is pretty tidy. room and a wonderful living space. And also we had another project with another idea. As I told you, we have 12 different kind of houses, but we only represent 2 here, which is this aim basically to represent some sort of classical order without using any architectural elements, only flat painting. That, if you imagine, is really fragile kind of architectural character, because if someone buy this non-existing building and he paints only to one color, the whole architectural character is shattered. But on the other hand, it has a really nice a sort of classicist, as we call it in Europe, character, and also for the inside, which is, this is a simple 2-level house for 2 adults and 2 children, and this is the layout of it. And as I told you, there are dozens of buildings like this. We are also happy to introduce some of them for you later on if you are interested in any of them. And not almost a last project. I'm not going to introduce this, but I also wanted to show one visualization about it. This is an educational trail in Hungary. This one we not simply designed, but also were the constructors of it, which is really worth it. This is what I say to you, that if you ever establish a studio, try to do into construction business as well, because there a lot of much more money in that kind of activity. And it's important, you know, because always just designing for almost nothing is not really a thing. And this is an educational trail called Turtle Educational Trail, in a terribly interesting idea in outskirts of Budapest, the last swampish area or a bogland in the middle of parking lots and next to highways. So it's very crazy land, but it's totally untouched. And the client wanted to show it for the public. And during the design process, it's important that we were the constructors of it, because when you are a constructor of a design task, it means that this kind of translation process vanishes, or not as crucial as if you have to give it to a constructor, your drawings, because you are the constructor, you know what you would like to do. And if you are on site and you not figure out everything properly, but you are on a site and you know how you're going to finish it, and you know what kind of architecture you would like to see final, and you're going to realize it. That's why we have mostly technical drawings of this thing. But during the design process, there was only one representation of this, which is the René Magritte painting that we reused or used as for a collage to introduce that kind of harsh and very intensive green area in that plot where this project was realized, and also introduce that kind of built structure that we would like to put there, that is visible from the distance, that it's not part of the very important things, that we would like to apply elements here which do not create the fake feeling of visitors that this is some kind of, this is close to nature, because you are never close to nature. If you build something in the bogland, which was untouched for hundreds of years, that activity would imply some sort of very, I don't know, very aggressive activity, I would say. And this is how it finally turned out to this kind of structure, a series of pavilions along a path, and which you can know how this bogland, this place came to life, how still it is, what kind of nature, what kind of living environment you have there, and why is that important in terms of water management in relation of Budapest water management. And this is how we searched for the way to represent during with the photos what we aimed with that collage I introduced to you. And the last thing, just a little bit of introduction what we have in Chicago, because we are really happy with that, and we really proud of that. This is an installation what we which just happened a few days ago to Chicago. The topic is now a shift, architecture in times of radical change, created by Florencia Rodriguez. And to this topic, we approached with a piece of architecture that is very common in Hungary these days as well, which is the Adobe fireplace or Adobe oven. It's in between a fireplace and an oven. It's a very multifunctional object, which is made out of Adobe, which is an earth-based building material, which really get our imagination how this could be used today's environment as an environment could source heat, for instance, and also this piece is important because during the modernization of the country after the Second World War, these pieces vanished away. They changed to another heating system, all the flats and all the apartments. But on the other hand, because the modernization of the country was bonded together with the communist state, most people felt that we have to get rid of these elements, not because of the modernization, which was inevitable, but because of communist impressors. And that's why it becomes a peace resistance. So who kept these kind of elements, they also felt that, okay, I'm still independent in some way. And that's why we thought that it's important to bring this piece to Chicago. We wanted to bring a real piece, but it turns out that it's possible with the budget which we have. But we try to represent every movement of it or every little idea of it. This is hand gestures done by Szabolcs, actually, which is with introducing the way how it was created, because it's really important that it was not simply out of Adobe, but the hand was the important tool you should have if you wanted to make one of these. So it's really an independent piece of architecture that could do, and how it sources heat. This is our design, how an Adobe fireplace could look like, and also a final drawing through which we introduced in a contemporary living environment, how it could be presented here. And very slight things about representation in architecture. This is the inspiration we took for this line drawing and for this high-rise view from Miss on the Rojo's drawing. It was really important reference, especially in relation to Chicago. He had similar representation of flats he designed or buildings he designed previously. And one simple gesture that we wanted to show a corner, because these elements were always placed in the corner, and it was photo shooted mostly in corners, and that's what we decided, and many other reference for contemporary architecture and contemporary culture that we placed in this one single drawing. So basically this is Paradigma Ariadné. We do, besides this, many other things as well, which we don't have time for that to introduce to you. Terribly, thank you very much again that having us here. You can reach us everywhere, really, especially on Instagram. On Instagram, we are always answered. This is how it works today. And thank you very much. I guess. Yeah. And also Szabolcs and Attila will answer, and Lilla too. So feel free to ask anything. Sorry.
Yes, that's exactly what we should do. So questions, please, if anyone has one. Who will be the bravest of them all? Don't be shy. Yes.
We have your name. You said afterwards you tell us what the name meant.
Yeah, what the meaning of that. Okay, so when we established the studio, that was the age when 2 letters and 3 numbers was used commonly to represent an architecture studio, or simply the name of the architect was put together in a strange way, and that was how they give name. And we felt, we were out of university, so we felt that we wanted to do something really different. But on the other hand, there was a really nice essay we adored that time, and we still adore it, by Beatrice Colomino, called Architectural Reproduction. And that essay introduced, at the beginning, that essay introduces a really nice rereading or a new understanding of the story of Ariadne and the story of Daedalus, who now basically when we go back for references, who was the first architect, Imhotep, Daedalus, and these kind of guys appears, and Daedalus, sorry, yeah, I'm a bit confusing. Colomina highlights that, okay, if you accept that Daedalus was the first architect who designed the Cretan labyrinth to close the Minotaur inside, who cannot find a way out of the labyrinth, it's a nice idea that he did it, and that's the first architectural act. But on the other hand, if the story continues that even Daedalus and Icarus, his son, was closed into the labyrinth, and they couldn't find a way out. And Colomina highlights that what kind of architecture is that who cannot find a way out of the building he designed. And he also introduces the other protagonist of the story, Ariadne, a lady, who helped Theseus finally to get into the labyrinth and kill the Minotaur and come out with a very simple piece of thing, which was a ball of thread. And Colomina says that if we listen carefully or read carefully, we can say that this was the first architectural act to understand the built environment and to find a solution to solve an architectural problem. Because building the labyrinth was more like a masonry activity, mason activity from the side of Daedalus. And this really got our imagination that this is a wonderful, nice read. For Paradigma also, we have a reference, but basically if there is a paradigma for Daedalus, there is a paradigma for Ariadne, and that's our paradigma, how we would like to achieve works and how we would like to relate to clients, basically. And as I told you, it's a nice read, but on the other hand, because also clients ask, there is a business meeting and this is, what is that? And through which we can introduce how we approach architecture. And that is a really important this is basically an agent through which we can bring the message in from the first moment.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm looking for hands.
Thank you so much for the presentation. So as someone, I really enjoyed the projects and what stood out to me and I was interested in asking as someone who's always working as a part of a group is that how does the this idea processing and entering the project works for you as a group? Because I noticed you always mention we or you mentioned your group members names for each project. So is that for each project, one of you has a stronger idea, or is that one of you has is stronger in one field and the other one in the other field? I'm really interested to know how does that work?
Yeah, I answer my read, but it's mostly common. The guys and Lila can add that we took a lot of effort to learn, enjoy others' ideas just as others. This is what the biggest task that we had to achieve in the first few years of the studio, that whenever we sit down, we should always add something extra to the other's idea, not to oppose it. This is really important. If you start a design task with opposing ideas, that is really kills you from the heart. And that's what we hopefully get rid of. Because we also were trained as architects that we're going to do everything alone and we are heroes. But on the other hand, group can have much better outcomes. That's why sometimes you cannot even tell which part of the plan relates to who. We mostly know what ideas come to who, but who continued it, who give that extra to the plan that really twisted it and make it unexceptional. That is sometimes is lost in these discussions. But basically a lot of talking, and sometimes it's hard. It's always hard because sometimes you just sit there for 5 minutes thinking how to move on. This is hybrid. Yeah.
Students come.
Hi, thank you for the lecture. Kind of adding on to that question. Um, so this might be a little bit naive coming from just like a student, like from the business side of it. How do you convince a client to give you the money to do a project like that? That might be so out there and creative. I mean, particularly the house that was the three sides
Yeah.
with the thing. Like, you sort of touched on it at the beginning, like the importance of real architectural renders versus art and creativity. But how do you approach, maybe from a business angle, convincing someone to like buy that house, to let you design that to completion?
Yeah. The trick is, especially those houses that I show you, Singapore was made for scholarship. So it was for ourselves.
Nice.
But we can use it to start discussion with clients if they reach us. But I think the important thing that you have to bear in mind if you go out to your studio, for instance, and that's what you wish to, that I think we have almost 200 projects since 10 years, and we have 3 realized buildings. Almost the same interior design and many exhibition design out of 200 projects, which means that there were a lot of projects. You know, when we sat down and started to discuss about the project, sometimes it turns out that it doesn't, we simply, they don't have that amount of budget that they can pay to us to give that amount of work into that. And we're trying to go for some simple thing only within the whole project. We always try, obviously, we always try to convince the client, but after years of rejection, to be rejected is this is what you have to also train yourself, that rejection is not a problem that will demolish you. This is part of the thing. This is how, you know, when we started the studio, a client reached us, we were like, oh my God, this will be a wonderful project, we realized. Now, a client reaches, okay, let's discuss. Okay, let's see what comes out. Maybe we'll turn into a terrible direction. Maybe it will be something bad. And if it's finally something good, then we are, okay, that's good. We acknowledge it. So this is, clients always have different ideas, they're not educated in terms of architecture. You always have to translate it. It's some kind of habit is needed. Not all of us have the same habit. Different clients need different kind of habit. That's why if you, it's good that you are a group, because there are clients who don't understand me, how difficult I try to explain things, but there are clients who really need this. And this is also true for all of us, as I see. Yeah.
Just a quick one. Thanks for sharing. These are your colleagues.
Colleagues, yeah, and Attila there.
It's great staying together too. When I was a student, we never got precedents from Hungary. We didn't know about your country very much. It didn't,
Yeah.
wasn't part of it. Maybe because it also was a unit. We couldn't go to the I'm curious, the stuff that you're looking at, first time in the US, you said?
Yeah, yeah.
So we have a Venturi building on campus, in case you don't know. Right over there. Maybe you've been there already. I'm looking at some of the postmodern references, trying to balance that with the brutalism that we were introduced through different shows, I saw at MoMA, et cetera.
Okay.
And is it out of curiosity that you were looking at Venturi? I see a little bit of learning from Las Vegas in there. I see a little bit of Memphis. I see a little bit of maybe OMA, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the investigations too. And I think it will maybe lead to more built work if that's something you're want to do and make money. Nice.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about just in general, what you were looking at the US, and if you could see maybe 3 things in the US, what would they be?
To visit,
You are saying someone's going to give you money and say, you guys are going to send you 3 sites in the US if you've never been here. What would you be most interested in seeing?
yeah, the thing is,
That's 3 you get for me. Putting you on the spot.
first of all, I think it's obvious that we know much more about the United States than you of Hungary, but it's also a fault of Hungarian architects and also the fault of communism. because for years the country was closed. And also the architects, after that, even the change of the regime, do not seek to have friends out there. So this is the key part of it that we try to change since the beginning. Let's make friends there, meet them, because they also probably struggle with similar problems. Because in Hungary, we have this need that between architects that how international architecture is, it's easier for them because they have better clients, they have better construction industry. And sometimes it turns out, obviously we have struggles, we have scarcity, we have problems, but we can do it. As a Budapest-based architecture studio, it's possible to go on. But sorry, Szabolcs can tell.
Well, that I don't have an exact answer. I mean, it's a beautiful question. I think so. We already visited like 3-4 extremely important pieces of architecture, like for us, for Miss van der Rohe, from Frankfurt White, and so on and so on. But for me, actually, like coming up from the first time from the Chicago Underground, that was something which it's really hard to really hard to experience in Europe, for example. Okay, we have been like few metropolises around, like in Paris and London and so on, but that kind of strictness and power and I don't know, and void and the size and the scale of a city, it's something extremely like alien from us. We came from Budapest, which is like the neoclassical and eclectic city, like three stories, 4 stories. So it's the power of the urbanized, I don't know, like place is one thing for me, which is
Yeah.
extremely powerful. Yeah. And since I have the microphone, I just got to go one question back. That was the question that how a client puts money in our pockets to build something. They don't. We actually, just to refer back Orshaya's first sentence, is that we put miles in to reach architecture. I think that's very important, and it's a very nice way to put it, because when we have a project, when we have a commission that we really want to push through the wall. Okay, so we put everything that we have in that, and that means that we not just producing the drawings and the plans and the permissions for a building, but usually we try to involve the client. We would like to give them like a story, a narrative, that how they should interpret, how they should understand that place, that building that we designed for them. And that usually helps. So that usually helps that, okay, this is a very weird looking building, but if you look at from that point of view and you understand the history and the context of it, that what we used for that, even if it's a Venturi or an OMA or whatever, which we have then back then it builds up a story from inside out, and it means so much, so much, I don't know, bigger stuff than just an empty building. So that would be my answer for that.
And also one thing about Hungary, which is terribly positive, that as a young studio with no experience in building, you can reach the clients. This is maybe indifferent in the United States, but for us, it's possible to design a single family house out of with zero experience, which is strange, but on the hand, it's really lucky because you have a chance to train yourself to design homes.
However, we don't have any family houses.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you interested in my four? I think I don't have. I'm interested in the ordinary buildings, and most of the things we have seen, I have seen in pictures, in movies, and I was really interested in how does it feel, how they feel in life, are they like, what's the scale of it? It's really hard to imagine it from Budapest, so I cannot say for.
But it's a really strange experience in architecture wise, that we know that where every door leads to, because we saw it in movies before dozen times. We are in a single house now, and we saw a door that leads to the basement, and we know what is there. It was not obvious that there will be a man cave down there, but it was, and because we saw it. That's a strange experience for me. Yeah.
Fourth member.
Well, I had a little time to think about, but I still don't really know because what I was thinking that Hungarian architects and also students got really, how to say, full of rejection about architecture. And we are quite the opposite. So therefore, if we don't have something which we really reject, like postmodernism or whatever, therefore we don't really have some really exceptional pieces what we really want to see. But as it happened, we visited the Fensford house, we visited the Falling Water House, and tomorrow we will visit the Glass House by Philip Johnson. But it's just because this is our first time. And if we have another week, we would go to see Robert Venturi and other stuff like that. So we are really open to got this experience and somehow to swim in this richness of this country. So thanks for.
It's terribly important that we digest everything. We love architecture as it is. Ariadne has approach to everything. No, it's not a single thing. There is no good architecture or bad architecture. Everything can be understood. Obviously, there are exceptional pieces out there which we are happy to visit and study. But we are interested in the whole environment, the work environment, and that's really work within us.
And I have a
Yeah.
question/comment, but I think what I see in the works that you presented is there's the literal collage that you make in 2D in your representations, like even in the Chicago Biennale work, you showed how you mixed, real photos, black and white, with drawings. But I also see this as an approach in your overall design philosophy almost. You take things, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is how I see it. You take things out of context from many different things, many different works of art or inspirations. It could be a curtain, lace curtain. It could be, I don't know, modernist abstract painting. And then you explore how that can apply to space making, right? And I think that's very interesting. And we have here a majority of first-year students. They've been in the past couple of weeks going through a similar process in which they start with an image or a photo and then extract things from that to recreate compositions. So I think it's good for them to also see how, you develop the practice out of that approach.
Yeah, I think we believe that mostly everything can be made to be a functional piece of architecture. It's not, you can start with functionalism or kind of, you should know the program of what you would like to realize, but it's not necessarily that you should draw your hand the program into a layout, but maybe like but we, in terms of a pavilion, we haven't tried it in a building yet.
Thank you. Sort of building on that, first off, I really love how you started thinking about the nature of the drawing as a space of freedom, as well as a space that kind of fixes and crystallizes a certain way of thinking about architecture that's independent of the construction. But on this notion of how you move, and again, I see in your work an intense two-dimensionality that stays even as it becomes three-dimensional, which is really fascinating and lovely. The Noli map, I'm thinking about how you made that move from image to an instantiated space. That process of looking analytically at all the angles that you could have pulled from. And you chose to pull that section with the column of Trajan. It's actually very different today.
Yeah.
How did that how did you settle upon the one that seemed right? What did rightness mean for your team in that moment?
In that time, so we had the idea that, okay, let's use the reference, the knowledge of use as a reference. Until that it was theoretized. And from that point, the knowledge map became only a carpet. And in a carpet, we should find a place where it could be functional. Trajan, sorry, maybe I misspelled it. Trajan of column is it not bear any theoretical background from that point. It's only a pattern, so it became a pattern. But on the other hand, what we did intentionally, that we imagined that this could help the city to have urban myths in the future. That people are going to dig into the question that what is this structure here? How it has this rectangular shape and the circular shape within, and that should create an identity that, okay, once there were architects here to figure out that this would be a good idea, how this relates to all these things, and maybe they're going to find this presentation even. And this is how the identity of city will be evolved and will be. Yeah.
Yeah, so it had nothing to do with crossing the Danube or anything intentional in the story.
Yeah.
Columns.
No. So, as I read.
Just to add a little bit that so it obviously it had to be functioning. So it's the task was that we got from the town that how many places and spaces and squares they want to use, and where the roads and the pathways should go. And these kind of perimeters like define that, okay, what kind of section we have to look for. And from that point, it was just an investigation, as David mentioned, that so we had very strict parameters. Actually, that was our second concept, because the first was like was a much like more like a postmodernist collage through the whole city with a highway and whatever. So it was that and they wanted more polite, landscape-ish solution, which we were like recognized that we cannot provide because we are architect and we don't want to draw like wavy lines, as a landscape architecture. So it's we had to like search for a tool that it can provide, but we don't draw it. So that was a trick.
Yeah, this is I forgot. Yeah, they wanted something nice, and they were terrible technical curvish shapes. So that was a trick on our side, because we didn't tell them what is that. They just showed the plan and we said, okay, this is what we want. Did not even realize what the concept behind it. They said, okay, this size, curvy roads, wow, wonderful.
Yeah, we didn't even mention Rome and all this. We just told them that this is the design.
Yeah.
Thanks again for the great lecture. It's wonderful to see your work. I guess I have maybe follow-up questions to what Benai brought up and Denise also, which is maybe about authenticity and newness or innovation, because I sense that your work is highly referential.
Yeah.
And yet you seldom mention the specific references, I think, but which I think because sometimes they're very obvious and sometimes you had to clue us in when it was this like specific modern abstract painting that we wouldn't have recognized, But I'm interested in that decontextualization process that Benai was alluding to, and this 2D-ness that also Denise mentioned. And I'm wondering if where the impetus comes from for you all in your practice. Is it about quotation for its own sake in terms of reference? Is it about optimism about what's been done before? Is it about a kind of idea that everything's been done and so we can only do something else? Do you do the same thing but differently? Or I don't know, I'm just curious about the motivation perhaps.
That could be true, but I think just one, and that we are changing through time. So this most of these work were from the early years of Paradigma Ariadné. Now we have time, and I think we also accept that with gaining knowledge and we having more experience, the way how you would like to do architecture could change, obviously. That's what I would add, but
Yes, that's a super question actually. And I think references and quotations are still part of our work process, let's say. But I think that could be because we chosen this kind of process instead of using how to say inspiration, because we find more originality or generality in using different references in different order, for instance, and putting together something which never existed or could be something new. And this could also connect to the previous question you had, that there are many good options and many good decisions, not just only one. We just realized after years that if we trying to find always one option, then somehow we have to fight it in between us. And instead of believing that there are only one, we believe there are many others. Like David just showed on the list, all the others could be a good option for that certain point. And I also believe that these projects are only one snapshot of a thinking of in our works. So if we start to continue any threads, then could lead us to another end.
yeah, and also sorry.
Sorry, so I'm very confident in that I consider architect as somebody who not produce building, but produce culture. And if you consider that, if you accept that producing culture is a very layered, it's a very dense thing. So if the musicians and in literature is allowed to use and refer back and transform it and deconstruct it and construct again, and I don't know, it's a very lively, not just in postmodern, but it's right now in contemporary time as well. So we are really the part of that. We are really the part of that culture. So our language is architecture, so we use that format and that medium to build and continue the culture that we have. And obviously, you can build from what you have back there. So I believe we're producing new stuff from the previous one. We adding it. We I don't know, move around the narrative and change the perception about it. But we put it one step further.
And I think one keyword here can be applied. This is the archive. What Orsia mentioned where we met for the first time. It was a conference that we organized together with an art historian about how to protect modernist heritage and postmodern heritage. Later on, we organized different conferences in this topic. The socialist modernism and socialist postmodernism, how can be protected in Central and Eastern Europe? And during that time, when we organized these conferences, obviously we reached a lot of materials from that time. And most of the architects in our age, I think, did the same, that they just opened, they opened the magazines, A+2 from that time, a Japanese architect or a review, and they realized that, wow, what the hell happened there? Because we were trained as architects, mostly that applied style was the critical region. This is what they were rated. Our teaching professors wanted to apply. We just said that, okay, but there are crazy things what you also did when you were young. How is it possible that now you don't want to do that, and why we can't do that? And this discussion, you know, this just somehow involve this kind of archival approach of architecture, that always there are things that happened before. So many things happened before that, and it's a terrible feeling that you figure out something and you just see that they done that.
I hate to be the person who brings up the food and the time. I do hope that you forget all of that. What you should remember out of this afternoon is on the screen. And for me, at least, it means that architecture can be fun and architecture is fun. On that note, I thank you all very much again for